welcome back to our fifth and final drill down session for the summer. I hope you're having a wonderful summer and reading lots of books. Today we're going to pick another excerpt from The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. This one's from chapter 17 on page 192. The text should be coming up now for you. We are going to be working on our reading skills. Do you remember what they are? Vocabulary, inference, prediction, retrieval, explanation, and summarising or sequencing. The text is up now. Read along with me. The battle was all over a few minutes after their arrival. Most of the enemy had been killed in the first charge of Aslan and his companions, and when those who were still living saw that the witch was dead, they either gave themselves up or took flight. The next thing that Lucy knew was that Peter and Aslan were shaking hands. It was strange to see Peter looking as he looked now. His face was so pale and stern, and he seemed so much older. So that's the excerpt we're going to be focusing on today. And remember, all the questions and all the answers are coming just from that passage. Okay, so let's have a look at our first question today, and it is about vocabulary. It asks us, which phrase in this passage means survivors? Which phrase in this passage means survivors? Have a look at the passage. Now, first of all, what's a survivor? Think about a situation where there might be a survivor. Yes, it's someone who remains alive, particularly when other people have been killed. So let's look in this passage and see if we can find something that fits that description. Right, let's look at line 2. And when those who were still living saw that the witch was dead, they either gave themselves up or took flight. So which phrase, which few words in that sentence means people who are still alive? Yeah, those who were still living. So the phrase in that sentence that means survivors is those who were still living. Does that make sense? Question number 2. Inference. We are using clues from the text to figure out the answer. How can we infer that Aslan had a very strong army? So let's look at the text. How can we infer, how can we figure out that he had a very strong army? And what did the army do? Exactly, it beat the White Witch's army. And did it take a long time? No, it says the battle was over a few minutes after they arrived and most of the enemy had been killed. So the battle was over very quickly and most of the enemy were killed. And that's how we can infer that Aslan had a very strong army. Question number 3, retrieval. Find and copy the words in the passage that show that Peter has changed. Well, let's have a look in the passage where Peter appears. So that's not at the beginning, it's towards the end. So Lucy notices, what does she notice? Peter and Aslan are shaking hands. And then what does she notice about Peter? How does he seem? Look at that last line. His face was so pale and stern, and he seemed so much older. So we're just going to lift those words from the passage and pop them down. His face was so pale and stern, and he seemed so much older. Now we can tell that something's different about him because it says there was something strange about how he looked now, which means that before he looked different. Question number 4, explanation. Why do you think that Peter has changed and looked older? What's happened in this passage? There's been a battle, exactly. And whose army has won? Aslan's army has won. How do we know that Peter's on the same side as Aslan? What in the text shows us that? They shook hands. But what has Peter been doing? He's been fighting in this battle, and that is why he looks so much older. He's become more serious and grown up as a result. What's our next question? Summarise this passage. Okay, when we're summarising, we're looking and seeing who is the central character or characters, where are they, what's happened and what's the result of that. Who are the central characters? Aslan and his army. Where are they? On the battlefield. What's happened? Aslan and his army have defeated the White Witch and her army, and as a result, the survivors have fled or surrendered, and Lucy noticed that Peter looks so much older. So in a nutshell, Aslan and his army defeat the White Witch. Those who aren't already dead surrender or flee, and Lucy notices that Peter looks so much older. Our last question is around prediction. What do you predict is going to happen next? Now, we can only use this text to make a prediction. So what has happened here? Peter and Aslan are victorious. The White Witch is dead. Some members of her army have fled or surrendered. So what could happen next? What would you predict? It can be anything logical and sequential from this point forward, something that naturally would happen as a result of what we read. You may have a totally different prediction from mine, but I might predict that if some of the army have fled or surrendered, that they would either, Peter and Aslan would either pursue those who had fled and imprison those that had surrendered, something like that. But you could have something different as long as it makes logical sense. Well, that is our last drill down for the summer. I really hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. And remember, when you're doing your own reading, see if you can practice some of these skills and make it a game. See how many words you can figure out for yourself. Play around with different ways of summarising or sequencing. Ask yourself inference questions, how you can figure things out. Act like detectives in the text to look for clues. And practice explaining your answers, giving reasons from the text and your own lived experience. Until the next time.